It's time for the Rose Chat Podcast, a podcast dedicated to celebrating the world's most beloved flower, the rose. Join award-winning gardeners Chris Van Cleef and Teresa Byington as they chat with rose lovers and experts from around the globe. With each episode, you'll gain valuable knowledge and insights to achieve the rose garden you've always dreamed of. Listen now as we explore the world of roses.
Hello, rose friends. Today I'm excited to welcome award-winning rosarian Danielle Hahn of Rose Story Farm, where she and her family are growing 30,000 or so roses for the cut flower trade. And in her spare time, she's written a book, The Color of Roses. And today we want to chat about the farm, the flowers, and this beautiful new book. So let's get started. Hey, Danielle, welcome to Rose Chat.
Oh, hi, Teresa. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm thrilled to have you. Now, Danielle, we first met via the podcast when you were the Great Rosarian of the World honoree back in 2014. You know, I was quite taken with you and the fact that you had a rose farm. I hadn't heard of a family rose farm before of this size. I mean, you were the first of a kind, at least for me. You were first for me.
I'm not sure if we were the very first, but we were certainly one of the first to do the English style roses, the fully petaled, the sort of European and older roses. I know Ray Riddell had a wonderful business, Garden Valley. Garden Valley was his business, and he sold hybrid teas to the trade, cut hybrid teas to the trade. And he's in Petaluma, and he did a great job. But we felt like there was room to do a different kind of rose, something that I was more interested in, fragrant, voluptuous, sort of romantic roses. And we just needed to figure out how we would be able to ship those. And it's like shipping, crystal glassware. It's probably equally difficult to make sure that, because the more fragrant the rose, the harder it is to ship because the thinner the petals. Mm-hmm. So you've got this really delicate product that you're shipping, and with a very, very limited vase life. So it was quite an education for us to learn how to do that. We're still learning, by the way.
Well, I'm sure, the seasonal aspect of it and those sorts of things, and feast and famine of the garden. So you're in California, and so you have a long season, and that certainly helps. So tell us a little bit about the farm, how it got started.
So we bought the farm in 1990. It was run down piece of property. I don't think it had been lived in or tended to in probably the 40 years. So what we got was, several old buildings and then old avocado trees and lemon trees that were on their last legs. And with that, we had, irrigation and electricity and gas and that sort of thing that was also, 40, 50 years that hadn't been tended. So we really got a piece of bare land, basically, that we had to start over with, and just slowly fell in love with it and wanted to grow something that would sort of enhance the property and make it a more beautiful place to live. And my husband was a farmer, had grown up with in a family that farmed in central Washington. So, and that's tough farming. I'm telling you, it's cold and it's windy and it's, hot in the summer and dusty. And his father started out farming with horses. They didn't have any machinery, any tractors or anything. And they had no running water and they had no electricity. Now that's farming for you. That's what we had here was California, 12 months of perfect weather, and you could grow just about anything. So he wanted to grow food, and I was a city girl. I was just like, I don't mind growing something, but let's grow something pretty. So we both had grandparents that were rosarians, and we had that was an interest of ours that was a mutual interest. And so we thought about it and thought, I wonder if we can do this. And, the soil here is so beautiful. We really literally could grow anything. So we started just growing roses here for ourselves, for our home garden. And then, people would come along and say, gosh, those are so pretty. And then I had one florist friend who used to sort of come out and kind of cherry pick through our roses for his own arrangements. And I thought maybe we're on to something. So that's kind of how we started. I thought, okay, we'll do this. We'll pick 1,000. We'll do 1,000 to start. We'll do 200 of each of 5 varieties. And Teresa, I poured through the rose catalogs and I came up with 5 that I thought would be good for florists. And of those 5, 2 of them were single bloomers. I didn't pay attention to that. I just thought, oh, that looks like a nice color. And they bloomed once in the spring and then never again. And then 2 of them were just terrible performers for California. I mean, probably for anybody. And so we literally, out of the 5 we started with, we have 1 of those 5 varieties that we still grow. It was a steep learning curve, and we quickly sort of figured out that there are no fast or mechanical ways to do this. We do it just like everyone else does in their home gardens. We just maybe do it a little bit more efficiently now and a little bit more economically, but we still do everything by hand. And we still, I know some of the big farms will use hedge clippers and that sort of thing to prune their plants. Mm-hmm. We don't believe in that. We do literally everything by hand. We take the thorns off by hand. We, obviously pick by hand. We prune completely by hand. And and here we are now. I think we probably have 40,000 rose plants. We change out probably 1,000 to 5,000 per year, depending on the styles and then plant health. Right now, this is our 25th anniversary year, which is,
goodness.
I know, isn't that amazing? It feels like it was yesterday. It really does. But in those 25 years, styles change. And we are now finding that some of the hybrid teas and floribundas that we planted originally just aren't doing as well as they might. Mm-hmm. So we're changing, some of them we're replacing with the same varieties, and some of them we're sort of changing over to some newer hybridized varieties.
Oh, the hybridizers are coming up with so many great roses. I mean, every year I get so excited just to see what's coming out. I mean, we really have some great choices.
Isn't it amazing? And, one of the things that I felt was important when writing my book was to make sure that the initial year of introduction was included for each plant. Because I think in the last 5 to 10 years, I mean, our roses here in this country are pretty much bulletproof if you pick a new one. They really are. And yesterday I was up in Wasco, and that's where they grow most of the roses for everyone in the country. Mm-hmm. And I was talking to them, and I was talking to Christian Bedard, who's the hybridizer for Weeks Roses, and his whole section, they don't spray anything. Absolutely nothing. They want to see how these roses do with absolutely no care whatsoever. And then that's sort of a trial. And then they send them around to the country. And he claims that Tennessee is the hardest place in the country to grow roses. So if they pass muster in Tennessee, then they pretty much will make the cut for their roses. But as he said, they want to have a rose that literally you can plant in your yard that will not, you don't need to spray.
Yeah. We're all rooting for them. I tell you, we are all rooting for them. That's what we want too, the least fuss, but we still want beauty. We still want fragrance, and nothing is no care. And we know that. So we just love what they're doing. We love that they're taking such care with the roses. So we're going to have those stronger, healthier roses for our backyards too.
Right. Do you have any new ones this year in your garden?
Well, one that is going to spring to mind since you said that, I have one that I trialed last year, and it's a proven winner's reminiscent pink. And to tell you a little background, we had a very strange winter. It wasn't very cold, but then we had some really cold snaps, and the roses weren't really ready for that. So many of my roses had to be cut back to the ground, and I lost my big climbers up high. And I also had some deer damage and all of that boring stuff that roses have sometimes. But getting back to reminiscent pink, she didn't sustain any damage. She is just a nice little shrub that right now, probably this one little lone shrub probably has 120 buds.
Oh, Lord.
And when you see the picture of reminiscent pink, you will love it. It looks like a David Austin. It is very full petaled pink, has fragrance. The blooms that I got last year were lovely. Never dreamed second year she was going to do this. So I can't wait. I'll send you a picture. So that one comes to mind. That one comes to mind of one that's just really to keep an eye on.
One of the ones that I'm quite impressed with is Uptown Girl. And that's a Tom Caruth. That's one of his final roses that he still has a few that are coming down the pike. He's now at the Huntington, but he was at Weeks before Christian, and he still has a few roses that are that were still sort of in the works. And Uptown Girl is really beautiful, and I'll tell you that one is bulletproof as well. And it's beautiful. It's kind of a deep salmony pink, almost as dark as hot cocoa in some, like in parts, but it is fragrant and the foliage is just perfect. So that's one I'm excited about as well. That one, of course, isn't in the book because it's a 2023 introduction. I mean, I think I could edit the book yearly and add some of these new roses.
Oh, of course you could. And I'm so glad you included date. I tell listeners all the time, even when you go to YouTube and you're doing your research, always check the date because so much has changed. Like if you're looking for you've got Rose Rosette and you're looking for information, all of that has changed through the years. So, it's great to do research and there's great YouTube videos and that sort of thing, but we want to know when, because things are changing all of the time. And like the newer roses, you're so right. You're just going to have better luck as far as a little care with the newer varieties. The others are just gorgeous. And I don't have a lot of hybrid teas in my garden anymore, but I miss them because they are so beautiful. But that date is really important.
It is. So the 5 things, I was very limited as to what, one of the things I really, my whole thing for 25 or 30 years has been to try to demystify rose growing for, home gardeners so that more people will attempt to grow them. Now, you can make it as complicated as you want, but it can also be a very simple and satisfying pastime. And I want to make sure that everybody that finds joy in the rose can actually, try to do it and be successful doing it. So part of the reason I really wanted to make sure that the roses we featured in the book were roses that people could readily find either as plants or as cut flowers. And I wanted to include what I felt were the most pertinent facts about each flower. So I felt like it was important to have the date. It's also important to have the hybridizer because, certain characteristics run through certain hybridizers' roses. I mean, we could walk through the field yesterday and I could smell, Christian's roses. I mean, they have the same, some of the same genetic compositions. And same with David Austin's, same with the Cortis roses. There are fragrances that run through each breeder. Their characteristics. I mean, all of David Austin's are shrubs. So that's kind of fun. So it felt like the hybridizer was critical, and also to give them credit, of course. I felt it was important to include who had hybridized the rose. And then I wanted to make sure that we had plant size and bloom size. And bloom size really for both the home gardener and for the flower arranger, because we all know that if you use a huge bloom on a dinner table, maybe you can use one flower, but you can't use a whole bouquet of huge flowers on the dinner table. But on the same token, for a climbing rose, you want to know the size of the bloom so that you have a structure that can support it. So that was important to me. And plant size, obviously, so that you know where to place the plant in your garden. And then the fifth thing was fragrance. And I sort of went to the mat with the publisher on this one, because they felt that fragrance wasn't that important because it's a book and you can't smell the roses. But I have had people tell me now that they've gone through the book and marked all the ones that say strong fragrance. And I actually personally made those judgment calls. So they may be right, they may be wrong, but they are my interpretation of how fragrant the rose is. I felt it was important. They wanted to include zone, and I thought, well, zone is something you can kind of, everybody should know their zone, and if they don't, they can look it up. I just didn't feel it was, if I only had 5 things to include, I didn't feel that zone was that big of a deal. That may come back and pester me in the long run, but for me, I just felt like that information is readily available on the internet. And that, roses can be grown just about anywhere that roses grow. So I didn't feel it was as important as fragrance. And, we're all about fragrance. So
we are, and one of the things I want to say about the book in general, one of my favorite books on roses is an old book. It was written in 1942, and it's Frances E. Lester's book, My Friend the Rose. I don't know if you've read that book, but someone said of that book that if you are not a rose lover now, you will be after reading this book. And, I would say the same thing about your book. One of the things I loved best about it, and I love everything about it, but your love of roses is evident, and it's contagious all the way through the book, just the way the roses are represented, and I know you have a history with roses. You have a deep love from a child, but it's just evident there. And I applaud you for, you are opening the door to so many people with these beautiful pictures, but the heart of the rose is there, and I love that.
Oh, thank you, Teresa. And, another thing that was really important to me, we did not retouch the photos. So the photos are the photos of the rose. And if you find that you see a leaf that has holes in it, or a petal that's brown, or, something that should have been deadheaded, that's fine. I found it very frustrating when we first started growing roses to look at these beautiful photographs and then go out in my garden and my roses just didn't look the same. And I wanted people to really know that it was okay to have roses that are not perfect. And recently came to my attention that wabi-sabi, it's a Japanese term for living sort of for perfect imperfection. And I'm not exactly sure of the description, but when I read the description, I was like, yes, it's a term for the nature, that not everything is perfect, and that we still need to enjoy. We need to enjoy our roses and our garden because of its imperfections. It's okay. Because if we only see the weeds, we're never going to enjoy the garden.
Oh, the weeds are always going to be there. They are always going to be there. One of the things you actually say in the book that stood out to me is that perfection has no place in the garden. And isn't that true? I couldn't agree more. But we all are affected, whether we want to be or not, by the things we see on social media. And those come with filters oftentimes.
Yes, they do. And I mean, I feel like I'm entering my eighth decade, Teresa. I mean, I just had a birthday and I was like, okay, so it's about time to just sort of accept those few extra pounds and accept those few extra wrinkles and realize that, it's not gonna, those things that we all want to attain may not be perfect, may not be possible. And it's the same in the garden. Sometimes things are such a surprise and you're just like, how did that happen? It just is so beautiful. And then other times you just walk out there and you think, gosh, my garden really needs some work. But even when you see that, you can find something that gives you pleasure, which is, I think, really important for people to just sort of relax and understand that not everybody is going to have a perfect garden. They just aren't. And the stuff that you see on social media makes it really tough. Flower arranging, weddings, fashion, you see these things, and I know with we have our brides come to us with requests, and sometimes the requests are just not, it's something they've seen, and I just know it's not possible to recreate what they've seen. And it's very difficult to, it's hard to say no, but it's also, I just feel like part of my thing is educating and making sure that everybody understands that beauty can be, beauty can be found in imperfection as well. So,
well, I wanted to actually quote the book. I think it was page 13. Another place where you give people permission to make a garden their own. And I think sometimes, when you get hung up, like, oh, you see the picture and da, 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 da. But you say nothing is permanent in nature. So don't be afraid to experiment with different colors and patterns. And if you're not satisfied with the results, move things around and try again, make it your own. And that can be true of a flower arrangement, but it can also be true of the garden.
And people, people are so afraid to do some, I mean, I am the same way. I'm afraid to take out a rose that's not performing. I think, well, maybe I didn't do something the right way. Maybe if I just treated it, maybe if I used a different fertilizer, maybe if I just trim back that tree a little bit, maybe it'll be okay. But the point is, we don't have all the time in the world here. And if something is not performing for you, I say, move it or give it away or toss it and start with something else, because we all have limited space. I mean, none of us have unlimited space, or very few of us have unlimited space. So, each little spot in your garden is precious, and you want to make sure that you have something that's enjoyable, and, and also not be afraid to change things around. Fashions change, gardens change. So
they sure do. They sure do. Speaking of fashion, what colors are trending these days?
Well, I'd love to say that the beige and the neutrals are going away, but sadly they are not. I think they are as strong as ever. And I've been saying this now for probably 5 to 7 years, certainly since before COVID, and certainly since before. I measure things by the Thomas fire and our mud flows, and the neutral colors were popular before those two events, and that was 5 or 6 years ago, and they're still going strong. Now, we thought yellow was coming along towards the end of last year, but I'm not seeing that this year. I'm seeing pinks. I'm seeing, lots of pink and green. I'm still seeing whites and green, and then the neutrals, the neutral, and I think it changes as we get into the fall. People are interested in the berry tones, but I don't think roses like Coco Loco and Honey Dijon and Distant Drums, they're not going anywhere. They're here to stay.
And they are beautiful. They are beautiful. Right now, our season is just beginning here in Indiana, and so it's the old roses, and I've just got a color all over the old rose garden. It's in the very back of my yard, and the fragrance. But there's bold colors, and there's light pinks, and oh my goodness. Wish we could have them all season long, but we'll just only get them for a while, but it's worth it.
It is, isn't it? And I think, we try to, for interiors, and for wedding work and that sort of thing, we try to pick colors that have a little sepia tone to them. They're a little dirty, I like to say. They're not really the pure tones. Pure tones work okay in garden settings, but it's very hard to bring those pure tones into your home and have them go with all decor. And it's the same with weddings. A lot of brides, the neutrals are safe. They really are safe because they go with everything. And then you can pick out one or two colors that might appeal to you. But again, those colors like the lavenders, you can find the lavender roses that have a little sepia tone to them. And the yellows, the same thing. They're a little dirtier than the lemon yellows. If you know what I'm sort of saying. And the same with the pink tones. Pinks that have more of a salmony tone are easier to work with than the ones that have the lavender tone. So that's kind of something I've gotten interested in more recently.
Do you grow Vanessa Bell? That's sort of a soft yellow.
We do.
I love it. I had to add another one. It's just so pretty.
Yeah, she's beautiful. She's beautiful. And then there's a rose. I'm just starting to custom grow more of them, but it's Florence de Latre. It's an old French rose, and it's a lavender that has like a lot of the sepia tone, and it is gorgeous. It's a pale lavender, and look it up. It's got a beautiful little tiny bloom. And we couldn't find them for years. And now we're able to find a few more plants. So that one I do love. Vanessa, same thing. It's a soft yellow and it really goes with a lot of interiors. So that's a fun rose for gardeners that want to bring their flowers in the house.
It sure is. Each year I designate something as the year of. And a few years ago, it was the year of shrubs. I wanted more shrubs to complement the roses, add some structure to the garden. So this year, it's been the year of yellow. I am not, a big yellow person, but Vanessa Bell has been in the garden now 3 years. So she's kind of changing my mind. And so every time I go look for plants, I'm looking at things that would go well with Vanessa and colors that will complement Vanessa. And the other thing I've been looking for this year is I had Poseidon. I had a few of them and lost them and just loved that soft color and haven't been able to find a Poseidon to purchase. And so I was looking for something else and I bought Plum Perfect. I bought 3 Plum Perfects. So we'll see. It might be a little
you're gonna love it.
I bought 3 of them, so we'll see.
No, you're going to love it. It is a beautiful rose. Again, it's got some variation of tone, and I think it's really handsome. I think you're going to love that. And it's going to be really great with the Vanessa Bell. I love lavender with yellow. I think that's such a pretty combination.
Well, in this garden, I put, there's the Vanessa, there's Plum Perfect, and there's Earth Angel. So those are primarily the roses in this bed. So we'll see. I think it's going to be pretty, but we'll see.
Oh my gosh, that's a beautiful combo. Really beautiful. Yeah. The other thing with the book, I was going to say, the other thing we did, which I didn't explain in the book, but I will I'll tell you, it is, we color corrected all the blooms. It was shot over a period of about 6 months. So, as roses as you go into the fall, the colors deepen and, seasonally roses do change depending on the weather and your soil conditions and so on and so forth. But we wanted to make sure that the book was consistent for one particular time period. So I did sort of middle spring, kind of early summer. So if you have a hot cocoa, you know that it's been photographed at the same time as the peace rose. It's not hot cocoa in the fall and peace in the spring. So hopefully it's a consistent enough book so that if as you look through it, you say, okay, well, that is the true color of that rose. I mean, people hopefully will be able to take it to their nursery and color match the roses. If they can't find a particular rose, they'll be able to find one that's very similar by looking at the book, at the particular, at the rose that they had wanted. So that was important to me as well, to not have a mishmash of some fall color, some spring color, and that sort of thing.
Oh, that's so good to know. I'm so glad you mentioned that, because it is true. I mean, the spring garden and the summer garden and the fall garden here are very different.
They are. It's fascinating to me to see the color change, particularly in a rose like Coco Loco. So my friend Felicia up at Menagerie is in Northern California. Her cocos look completely different than mine. I mean, she'll have a lot of mauve in hers when we have beige, and then we'll have the mauve when she has the beige. It's really interesting to see how different zones also change the color of a rose depending on the season. So yeah, it's fun. So if you know that all the roses were photographed sort of in Central California in sort of mid-spring, then hopefully that is a helpful hint.
It is. It certainly is. And the other thing that you included that I was very glad you included were the breeders, because I know if I see Cordis, I know it's going to be good in our winters when we do have a hard winter. And so I'm always looking at those roses. There is going to be fragrance, and I just know that those particular roses are good in my garden. So when people see the different ones, they're going to, be attached to those. And so I'm glad that you included that.
Yes. And, also his roses are very good in the vase. They have a longer vase life than typically some of the others. I think the petal thickness, he has thicker there, we all hopefully know that fragrance pores are in the petals. So the thinner the petal, the more fragrant the rose, and obviously, and the less time that it will spend in the vase. So the thinner the petal, the more delicate the flower, the less time in the vase. So his petals tend to be a little bit thicker, and the rose tends to be a little bit more durable, which makes sense for you. And as a result, we tend to get another day or two in the vase that we wouldn't get with, say, something like Ambridge rose from David Austin, or I'm trying to think of another thin-petaled rose that right now, but Ambridge comes to mind. It's so soft. Or Wollerton Hall, Old Hall. That rose has a minute in the vase, maybe no longer than a minute. So it's fun to know like which breeders' roses last longer as cup flowers as well.
You're making me think of a rose I saw this morning that's just beginning to open. It's Celsiana damask, and the petals are so fragrant, but they're so paper thin. The sun was shining on some of the petals, is like going through the petals, but it's so beautiful. But that Celsiana is just
1 second.
Yes.
The vase. I know.
Yes.
I have people call all the time and they go, my roses only lasted a day and I don't know what I did wrong. And I was like, you didn't really do anything wrong. I just think it's been very difficult for us who we've been told for all these years that flowers needed to last 8 or 10 days in a vase. 1-800-Flowers, bless their heart.
Yeah.
Their flowers for 10 days. I mean, whether it's an iris or, obviously don't sell iris because they won't last 10 days in a vase. But it's people expect roses to last 8 or 10 days in a vase. And, you can find a greenhouse rose that will last that long. But I don't think it's possible for a garden rose to last more than, 5 days. 3 to 5 days is probably average. If you get 7, we're really doing something right. Yeah, I think we don't expect our bottle of wine to last 5 days. We don't expect our dinner to last 5 days. I don't know why we expect our flowers to last. I think it's I think we have to sort of rethink some of these things and appreciate the rose in all its forms, even when it starts to drop its petals. They still are beautiful.
Yes. I'm looking at some right now, and the petals are dropping. It's from Therese Bunier, a rugosa, who is also a little different than some of the rugosas. She's more thin petaled too, and they're dropping, and it has a little potpourri on the table. It's just beautiful.
Isn't it fun? I mean, it is fun. And I think even at a dinner table, as the roses start dropping their petals. And again, with arrangements, I think you can reach into an arrangement. And if it bothers you, you can, take fingernail scissors and cut out the offending bloom. You don't have to throw the whole thing away. Or you can just let it sort of naturally, live its life. And I feel like I think I am a crazy person. I like roses no matter what. I mean, yesterday Christian was saying that this rose wasn't going to make the cut because it set hips too early, and I was like, "What's wrong with that?" And he goes, "Oh, no, it's just some people don't like that." And I was like, "Why?" I mean, I think the hips are so beautiful, but yeah, they look at all these different things about these plants that might. Or another one had Grand Dame. Do you grow Grand Dame?
No, I did have her many years ago, but I do not have her now.
So she has that very graceful arching neck. I mean, she
Yes.
doesn't hold her head. It's a beautiful rose, but they do tend to kind of bend. And this rose was the most beautiful rose. It grew with the huge blooms, darker than Grand Dame, sort of really dark berry color. And and lots of blooms on the stem, but she kind of didn't hold her neck up. And he goes, "That's not going to make the cut and I was like, well, but why? I mean, it's so beautiful. It's just, I think it's interesting what people are looking for and what we're striving for. But if it makes all of those, if it passes all these tests, you can imagine what a great rose it's going to be.
I know they're putting it through the paces, and we appreciate that. But I also appreciate rose hips like no other. I tell you, they can be so not only fascinating but just stunning. And yeah, if I deadhead my rugosas, they're going to keep blooming and give me those wonderful blooms. But I get excited to see those big cherry hips too. They're just wonderful.
Well, they are. I mean, it's part of the whole adventure of the rose. He mentioned one called Sweet Hips, and he said that one produces hips that you can eat, that they're just they're delicious. And I was like, well, I'm not sure about that, but apparently I guess hips are used in cooking. So
absolutely. Rose hip tea, jams, jellies. On a trip to Turkey a few years ago, we so many roses in that region of the country, of the world. And what we realized is that rose is a flavoring. We think of it as a fragrance, and so it's like you're eating perfume. It's just kind of a head game, but it's what we're used to. But rose is very much a flavoring in that part of the country. And so rose hip tea and rose jams and jellies and rose flavored ice cream and all of that, yes, is very and I've seen in a trial Sweet Hips, and it is a beautiful rugosa. Very beautiful.
Yeah, I'm curious because I do love using hips in arrangements. I think they're gorgeous. So I would have no problem with the rose setting hips. And obviously, if you keep cutting them off, you're going to get flowers. But I think the goal, and I think it's a noble goal, to make sure that you don't have to care for these roses, that they just, I mean, the Julia Child is a perfect example of the rose that they are trying to promote it. It grows for everyone. It blooms like crazy. You don't have to touch that rose, and it just does, amazingly well. We don't have to contend with black spot like you do.
No.
Yeah, I know. But that came up a million times yesterday, just how important it was to make sure these plants aren't susceptible to black spot. Because
It's a huge problem. It's a huge problem in this area. And you mentioned Julia, and you've mentioned another one of Tom's roses. But if they're bulletproof here, they're bulletproof. And another one of Tom's that is pretty much bulletproof here as far as disease is Easy on the Eyes. Do you grow that one? It's fragrant. Take a look at it. It's absolutely stunning. It is an open bloom. It's I don't know how many petals. I can't think, but it would be an open bloom, and I think you would really like it. I haven't thought of it as far as just the arrangement side of it, but it is beautiful in the garden. It is just pretty much bulletproof for everything. No black spot, has fragrance. So Tom has given us a lot of beauties.
Yes, hasn't he? I know. I mean, it's really remarkable how many roses that he's responsible for that are just amazing.
Back in this, maybe it was January, I asked Tom to do a Zoom meeting for our Rose Society. And I said, I want you to tell your story. I want you to start the beginning and just bring us through. And he did. It was the best. Oh my goodness. He did such a good job. And he's so funny and he's just done so much. So it was just a rose education just to walk through. He fell in love with roses as a child too. And it was an absolutely fabulous program. And I think he's done it for others since then. So
he's really amazing. And apparently I have not been down to the Huntington recently, but apparently the garden just looks phenomenal.
I was there just as he was coming on board, and so I've not seen the changes that he made. The whole garden itself is just mind-boggling, beautiful, but I know he's just made some wonderful changes. The pictures are just outstanding. So it's definitely, I want to get there again.
Amazing.
Well, Danielle, tell our friends how they can find your book.
Well, it's available at most booksellers. Amazon is probably the easiest. They can also order it on my website, and they can get a signed copy that way. I was telling you earlier, it was just featured on CBS Sunday Morning 3 or 4 days ago, and I was just shocked at how many people reached out and said they saw the program and saw the book. And I'm thrilled, absolutely thrilled. But we've seen a huge uptick and up to number 1 in several categories on Amazon. I was shocked, absolutely shocked. But it was on Martha Stewart's. She did a little segment on planting a rose garden for CBS Sunday Morning. It's just a little 3-minute piece, but she shows people, how to plant a rose and talks about the various types. And then she showed the book. And it's been really great. So, and I think on that particular program, if you look at the extra information on it, they mentioned all the stores that had the book, and it's, Barnes and Noble and all, the usual culprits, but also most independent bookstores have them as well. So hopefully it's not hard to find. A couple of weeks ago, she invited me to come back and help her with her rose garden. And this is how things started. She actually wrote a little blurb for the book, which was so nice. And I've sent her some flowers, and she loved them. And she had a very, very particular, it was really fun to help her because she knows exactly what she likes and what she wants. So the color scheme in her garden, no red, no purple, no orange, and very little yellow. And she didn't really want a lot of white. We did sort of some creams, apricots, all shades of pink, peaches, and that was about it. And it is so beautiful.
I bet it
came out beautifully. So we planted 200 plants. We sent them, I got them from my local grower here, who's Otto and Sons, and they picked out the most beautiful plants, and then we shipped them back to her. And then I flew back there with 400 cut roses, which we hydrated, and then did the first portion of the segment is ranging flowers, and then we showed people, the various types that we picked. We picked a floribunda, a hybrid tea, a shrub, and then a very fragrant variety. And then the fifth one we did was a new introduction. And so those were the 5 that we sort of showed people that were featured in the garden. And then we actually planted the rose garden, which it was a blast. We had so much fun. So that's going to be on Martha Gardens, which is her Roku station, and it'll be on sort of early June. She saw the preview this week, and I think it's a go. So I think it's okay for me to say that it's coming up.
And wonderful. That is definitely something for us to look forward to.
Yeah, it was really, really fun. And we know, as you know, there's a million different ways to grow and care for roses. There's probably as many ways that as there are gardeners that grow them. And I've always said, it doesn't matter how you do it. I mean, if you follow a few simple instructions, I found it frustrating to read that there were various ways to dig a hole. I mean, every book that you read tells you a different way to dig a hole. But anyway, she used our instructions, which are pretty simplistic. We just dig a hole, we add fertilizer and bone meal, and keep the graft above the ground, and that's about it. And then we do use a nice planting soil, and we use a wonderful compost as a top coat. She doesn't do any irrigation to speak of. She hand waters or overhead waters everything. Now that's here in California, we have to be very cognizant of our water. So that would never fly here. But so we didn't worry about that. But it's a beautiful garden. She trimmed it in her hand-grown boxwoods, which she's incredibly proud of. She's grown these boxwoods from tiny little slips, and they're beautiful. So she started with this beautiful boxwood-lined garden, and then the garden itself, the rose garden itself, is very formal. It's really pretty, and we designed it so that the colors kind of blend together, and the height, the heights kind of are all similar, with the taller ones in certain areas. But anyway, it was nerve-wracking, I must say, but also one of the most fun things I've ever done, ever.
Oh, sounds just perfect.
Yeah, it was really fun. And she is the consummate teacher. She is really a wonderful teacher. She not only teaches, facts and how you do it, but the motion for what she feels about whatever she's doing comes through in her voice and the way she teaches. And I think that's why she's such an incredible icon, legend. She really is amazing.
Everything that she did, back in the day when I was learning, I mean, she had a book on roses that I read it over and over and just drooled over the pictures, and it, even though it was beautiful, it was real too. She made it a real experience, and I really appreciated that. And so we all just, have been there with Martha for the whole thing. So many of us, and so glad that she's still planting rose gardens, let me tell you.
She is, and her gardening show is phenomenal. It's up for an Emmy, which is great. I mean, really amazing. It's brand new. I think it started at the beginning of this year. And she also does a Martha Cooks on the same Roku station. And I know she's working on a new book. And I mean, she just doesn't ever stop. It's go, go, go. I mean, I'm flying here for the day, and it's phenomenal. And then, her latest amazing accomplishment is her Sports Illustrated cover. I'm 81 years old and she looks like $1 million. So, I
Yeah.
mean, listen, just also just sort of making sure that we all know that just about anything is possible.
Well, that was really fun to see, and just glad that she's, still doing what she has always done so well. The whole idea of stopping, I just don't really feel like the need to ever want to stop gardening, especially. It just feeds my very spirit and soul, and it keeps us fit and out in nature. And so just something that I definitely don't want to retire from.
I know I don't think, I mean, it's something that we all can do. And I think it's, well, it like cooking. And I think they go hand in hand. They really do go hand in hand. It's something that you can do it in a small way, or you can do it in a big way. You can do it in a simple way. You can do it in a complex way. It's, you can just get as involved as you want, or stay as distant as you want, and you still can enjoy every single second of being in that garden, which is, I mean, why we all love it so much. And roses, I mean,
Absolutely.
they're just so incredibly magical. I mean, they're magical. I don't think there's a flower in the world that gives us as much, as a rose, in terms of color and fragrance and the season of the blooms. I mean, we get more than you guys do, but we all, I mean, I bet your roses grow for a longer period of time than any other flower in your garden.
Absolutely. We get peonies for a couple of weeks. We get irises for a couple of weeks. We get lilacs for 3 weeks, and the best perennials for maybe 6 weeks. But these roses are blooming, June to October. I mean, they're just going strong. So,
Yep.
so you just get a bang for your buck for sure.
Yeah, you do. And there's so many to choose from. There's just, trying to pick just 300 for the book was almost impossible. It was really, really a challenge, considering, and I've never been focused on old roses, and that's a whole different department.
Oh, they're beautiful. I mean, they come to you with their own history oftentimes, and legends and stories that will just fascinate you. And you just, when I walk through the old rose garden here, I mean, it's people I call by name, because I know their story, even if it's from the person who gave it to me, because, people pass around old garden roses pretty frequently in our circles. But yes, and found roses, and there's just a lot of history and story there, and it is a very special area of roses for sure.
Oh, it is. It's just, and it's like I haven't even brushed the surface of that, and that's the whole history and those roses. I did include a few old roses, only in that because people tend, I mean, Lady Banksia and Cecile Brunner and Sombroy, those three, I think those are the three that I can think of that, that are pretty common and that they're easy to find, and that they're somewhat repeat bloomers. I mean, not Lady Banksia, but we actually, we can get 2 blooms out of her in California if we're lucky. But just those were the only 3, and I felt like I had to include them because they're just so they're bulletproof, they're easy to find, they're easy to grow. They do so much for your garden, those
Yes,
3
they do.
particular roses. But other than that, trying to pick the 300 modern roses, my gosh, it I mean, it was really hard.
I don't even know how you even began. I don't even know how you got started. Maybe just with your favorites, but that's tough.
It was really tough. And, to this day, I'm like, oh my God, I forgot that one. And what about that one? And so, and, then thinking about doing volume 2, I was like, no, I can't. It was really, it was a labor of love. I'll tell you, just making sure that each one of those blooms was cut at the right moment, and then, and turn to the right sort of angle, and making sure that, and then the photographer is a very dear friend, Vicki Pearson, and we've worked together for years, but she is as nitpicky as I am. And the two of us would look through the lens and say, okay, well, maybe if we just turned it a little bit more times 300, trying to make sure that each rose was shown to its best, to its best. Well, I wanted to make sure, like, for instance, some of them, I think it feels like you can jump into them because the centers are so gorgeous and beautiful. And then others, I like the stem so much. I love the whole rose sitting on the stem. And so I wanted the whole flower to be shown. So anyway, it was, thinking about, somebody said, are you going to do another volume? And I was like, no, I can't. I couldn't think about it. It just, it was a 3-year project. It was great.
Probably like giving birth. You have to have a little time in between you make that decision.
Yeah. Somebody said to me that it was an interesting thing. She said that Jewish faith that that one of the there are 3 things that they strive for in their life, and one is to visit their homeland, and the other is to have a child, and the third is to write a book. And I don't remember what order, and I hope I remembered that correctly. But I thought, what an interesting thing to say, to that birthing a child, writing a book, and visiting their homeland, would be, I just think that's fascinating.
Well, the book especially could be about your story and just passing on, what you've learned. It could be many things, or something that was important to you, or your life's work. So
yes, exactly. So so that was fun. I think my agent passed that little nugget along to me, and I was like, wow, that just makes so much sense, because it was a huge, I just never thought I could do it. I think that was really the whole issue, was I've been wanting to do it for so many years, but I just never thought I could physically do it, that I would have discipline.
You did. Now, before I let you go, I have to go back to the early farming days. I'm so curious as to which of the 5 roses made it.
Oh, okay. So it's Martine Guillot, which is very hard to find. We don't have, it's not available in commerce right now, but I'm hoping to be able to take care of that so that people can. That rose, I'm telling you, we dug those. So I started with 200. It's now, I've dug those up and split them, and dug them up and split them like 4 different times. They're all, it's so healthy. You cannot believe that rose. Every year it gets better. I've never seen anything like it.
Say the name again. I didn't catch it.
It's Martine Guillot, and it's kind of a creamy white rose. It's the last to bloom in the spring. It's still not blooming here. And what is the date today? May 24th, I think. It's still not blooming. And it is the last to bloom in the fall. So it's the last to bloom in the spring, and it's one of the last. I can keep it going through Valentine's Day. Wow. So it's a remarkable rose. Now, I'm telling you, and I own, what, I also still grow Fair Bianca. Those 2 made it out of the 5.
That is a beauty. And that's a David Austin. It's been around a long time.
Yes. And also impossible to get. But the thing about Fair Bianca that is so remarkable, it's a pure white rose. His Tranquility has a yellow tone to it, and his Winchester has a blush tone to it. Those are both lovely, lovely white, fully petaled roses for the wedding trade. But if somebody says, I don't want yellow, you cannot use Tranquility. And if somebody says, I can't stand pink, you can't use Winchester. So then you're stuck with Fair Bianca, which is very, very, very hard. It's a hard plant to grow. We replace probably 500 of those every year. It's
Oh my
really hard to
goodness.
grow.
Oh
It
my
can
goodness.
die back. It's just, I would never put that plant in someone else's garden, but as a cut flower, I don't think there's anything better. I just don't.
Now, did I read that you also sell some of your rose plants, not just your cut flowers?
We do. We do. It's hard. I have some clients that beg us to ship them. Well, we ship 200 to Martha in FedEx overnight in these large boxes. So we do it, but it's really costly to do it,
Mhm.
because they weigh a lot and the boxes are huge. But for people who, if you cannot find a rose and we have it, for some people it's worth it. So
Mhm.
I have multiple clients on the East Coast and the Midwest that buy roses from us and we ship to them. It's just when they hear the price of the actual shipping, they faint. But in a sense, you're buying the rose for the long term. So for
Yeah.
some people, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
And if it's not available bare root from some of the companies, it's probably the only way you can get it.
That's so true. It is getting harder to find things. I had an experience the other day. It was my first. I was looking for a particular rose, Crown Princess Margareta. It came up when I was searching it. It came up that it was available through Amazon.
What?
So I went to Amazon. I said, okay. And since it was Prime, delivery was not an issue, but it was shipped from Heirloom Roses, and it said that. Then later, I was actually with Heirloom Roses at a conference, and I asked Robin, I said, I felt so guilty. I bought a rose on Amazon, but I said, I think it was shipped from you. And she said, oh, that's our store. We ship through Amazon. So it was an attachment. I thought, oh my goodness, if I've done this and it's, where's it coming from or whatever,
Well,
but it did ship.
that's free shipping.
It was free shipping. So I don't know if you can find, if someone's doing that, but I didn't go to Amazon to look, but as I was searching for it, it came up that it was available on Amazon, and I had already checked Heirloom. This is how quick it was. They hadn't changed that it was available. I mean, I caught it because I was looking like every day. I caught it now if you went there, I think it's available on their site again. But I had just gone there the day before and it wasn't. But then all of a sudden when it became available, Amazon had it too.
Oh my
So
gosh. And it was a plant, not bare root.
it came in a pot. Yeah, it was a
The pot.
plant.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's incredible. That's great. And then free
So it
shipping.
just came from them. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's incredible.
there's new and different things all the time. And I know we have some growers like Matt at High Country Roses. He's trying to get some of these hard to find roses back, and he sells them in little, small containers on their own root. And for our climate, that's really good. And then you get a small but mighty rose. And he's being able to get a hold of some things that we've been struggling to find. So I really appreciate all of you that are trying to get some of these beauties back in commerce.
Yeah, my grower just told me he has 1,500 starts for me to pick out what I want to try to bring back. So I get to choose 1,500. Well, it'll be like 200 or 300 of each, but yeah. So we're going to try to get some of these older, I'm going to try to do Mojave and Sutter's Gold. Those are two of my absolute favorite. And, Lemon Spice, that's another great one. Garden Party. There are some old American roses that are just incredible that you just cannot find anymore.
Now, wasn't it the picture? Isn't there a picture of you as a little girl? Aren't you sniffing Sutter's Gold?
Yeah, Sutter's Gold. Yep. And I have like 2 plants left. We started with 50, I think, of that, and 50 Mojave. And, Condesa de Sestago. Do you know that rose?
No, I don't.
Oh, that's an old Spanish rose that is just knock your socks off. And I don't think I have any more of it, but I'm dying to find that. So some of these roses, and it's not easy, but we can try So I'm hoping to bring in some of the French roses that are not available anymore, and then some of these old English roses that the old American roses that I started with, and hopefully, in the next couple of years. But we sell these. Our pots are all 5-gallon, and they're grown by Otto.
Oh, yeah.
So Otto grows them out for us, and then we'll ship them.
So that's not going anywhere very easily.
Yeah, no, it's a
No.
process. And yeah.
Well, Danielle, our time is coming to a close. We could just talk all day.
Forever about roses.
Yes,
I know.
we could.
I
Thanks
know.
so much for joining me today and taking the time to write this beautiful and very helpful book.
Good.
I love it. I know that our listeners are going to love it. It really is the ultimate guide, as you say in the book, for selecting the perfect color of rose for your garden, special event, or floral arrangement. So you covered it all for us.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I hope it gets dog-eared in your hands, and that it's covered in dirt, and that I really do. I hope it's used as a guide, when you go to the nursery or go out in the garden. I just want to see that book really sort of used.
Well, mine will definitely be. So thank you again for joining me today.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Teresa.
It's been fun. And friends, thanks for joining us today. And on our next episode, I'll be chatting with Robin Jennings of Heirloom Roses. We'll catch up with her and see what's going on at Heirloom. And until next time, have fun in your garden.
You've been listening to the Rose Chat podcast with Chris Van Cleave and Teresa Byington, expert rose gardeners who want to help you achieve the rose garden of your dreams. Don't miss an episode. Listen anytime on our website at rosechatpodcast.com or listen on the go via the Rose Chat app on iTunes and Stitcher Radio. Share this podcast with your social networks and join us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram by using the hashtag RoseChat. Join us next time for another edition of the Rose Chat podcast. The Rose Chat podcast is a production of the Rose Chat Media Group, Birmingham, Alabama.